Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're going to continue with the Bhagavad Gita on to the 13th chapter. Up to this point we have traversed the journey from the ego to the self in chapter 6, and from the self to the absolute and God to 12. The nature of many people who interpret the Gita is pretty much they say that the essence of Gita ends in chapter 6 and that all the other chapters just reiterate the principles that were revealed in the first 6 chapters. This is not my experience. My experience is that what was revealed in the first 6 chapters and in the next 6 chapters, where we move from the ego identification to the freed individual, and then from the freed individual towards the universal, both as in its unmanifest as the absolute and as the manifest aspects as God. That is each is a partial experience, a partial expression of the same. Each is this expression of greater intensity, greater consciousness, greater integrality of the nature of experiences of the previous chapters. So effectively, you're getting more of the same thing. Like the hologram, a piece of the hologram has the same image as the whole hologram. So in this way, there are many similarities repeated again and again throughout the Gita, but you're getting more on the hologram. The difference is the quality and the depth of the realization that occurs. So in this last 6 chapters, this is almost entirely only going to be known by a tiny fraction of mankind. It is, yes, an extrapolation that you can take from any of the previous 6 chapters or 12 chapters and be able to extrapolate into this, but it is its own definitive, qualitative experience. So I did not know this, of course, before. I would read these later chapters and I think it was just some sort of poetic license, and they were just continuing to re-say what was said previously. But it's proven that it's not true. That the foundational, the nature of the revelation is much more profound and total and integral in these last 6 chapters. So we ended the 12th chapter, and in the 12th chapter, Arjuna had gone through the ecstasies, finished the ecstasies of the 11th chapter, and had stabilized. And now his vibrational frequency had become stable. Previously, in the 11th chapter, it was changing abruptly. So there was all these ecstasies and all these revelations, and it was a lot of fireworks and destruction and going on, such that he was terrified for much of that experience. Well, it was simply a purging of that which still resided in his system that separated him from the eternal truth. Now, his system has come to a new level of peacefulness or silence and stillness that's allowed for him to have a kind of an equanimity, a quality of equanimity, where everything is occurring very harmoniously and very naturally. And these are described by the characteristics in the tail end of the 12th chapter, such as he who accepts a friend and a foe with equal feeling, honor and dishonor in equal spirit, tastes heat and cold, happiness and sorrow equally, is free from attachment, takes praise and blame alike, has attained inner silence, One remains ever happy, irrespective of what he receives. One has basically separated their identification with their human nature, but they still are coded by the characteristics or qualities of their human nature. So, but that quality of detachment brings forward these attributes of equanimity, of detachment, of equality. These are symptomatic of one who, as consciousness, has come out from its complete embodiment in the human condition. And it's now a stable state. It's not good days or bad days so much. It is simply, all days are simply expressions of the same one reality. So it is, even though life is going on, the consciousness is remaining pretty much the same. This is the nature of the state. So what's coming now is not coming in meditation. It's not coming in any just certain situations. It's a continuous state of receptivity or relationship with the divinity that's utterly natural, without any examination. Very similar to the state of the self in the 6th chapter, when it's described in this, very similar, but the depth of it, the clarity of it, the integration of it is greater. Now what starts happening is that the very fundamental structures of existence are available to be known. When one is in this state of silence and stillness, then whatever they're attending to reveals its nature, reveals its essence, reveals its source, reveals its purpose, it reveals the qualities, the characteristics of how it interacts with all other things. You see the weave, the matrix. So this chapter is a conversation about the revelation of the matrix in which this entire human event, creation event, has occurred at a deeper and more profound level, with more particulars, with more tangible structures, the understanding of which can change the very nature of this dimension. So these are where the powers come. These are where one who has the consciousness can begin to see the nature of the infinity and the nature of the finite, and the interplay between the two, and be able to act in the intermediary position of those two. So it may not occur to such a being to take any action, because the motive for action at this point isn't there. It's simply being, and action's just happening. This is the state of merger with God, and it's an ecstatic relationship. It's oneness. The personal divine and you have become one, but you don't know it fully yet. You are already the Brahman, but now you're God. But you don't know it yet. Because what we think of God as human beings is not what actually God is. It's something very much more intimate and personal than the idea of God. It's something that can be lived. Something that you are already, but not knowing. In the Bhagavad Gita, the chapter 13 is somewhat similar to chapter 7 and somewhat similar to chapter 9. Both of these are, all of these are revelatory chapters. One has come to a state of realization, and now they're looking at existence through new eyes. So the subsequent chapters to 6, to 8, and now to 12 are all describing the shift of the person who's made that transition. And they are now, their consciousness is now brighter, stronger, and it's able to perceive deeper and farther than it's been able to each time. So that's what's happening here again. In chapter 13, Kurukshetra, Kshetra Vihara Yoga, the yoga of the field and its knower. Sachmani read.
Arjuna said, Lokasava, please explain to me the difference between matter and spirit, the field and the knower of the field, and also about knowledge and the knower. The Blessed Lord said, Arjuna, those who know the truth of both say this body is the field, and one who knows its truth is called the knower of the field.
Read the next one.
In all the fields, I am the knower. Knowledge about the field and its knower is true knowledge. This is my opinion.
This is saying just what it seems to be saying. That the entire field of this existence is the body. And that what you are is the knower of the body. It is saying that your entry point into the nature of this entire creation, its purpose, the way it's organized, how to affect it, how to change it, can all be found through the body. That the body is the means by which consciousness can know itself. Without the body, consciousness doesn't know shit. Without what the body represents, there is nothing to know. There is only the knower. So if there wasn't a body, there could be no knower. So the body is the key. Here we occupy this body, we dismiss it, we play with it, we leave it behind in our mental pursuits and our ambitions and all the other things we make important but the body. And it's telling us that this is your doorway. This is the key to understanding how it all works. It's the fruit of the tree. It is that which is the outcome of this entire creation. By knowing the body, and of course knowing the personality that comes with the body and the systems and structures of the body and all the complexities of a human body, a organism, a living organism that is self-aware, that has the ability to reflect on itself. There is nothing more important for nature to create. Literally, evolution fulfilled itself when it made the self-aware human body. Because it had created a vehicle by which consciousness could wake up in. And since the whole mission of existence is for consciousness to wake up, then the vehicle was nature's part of the job. But unfortunately, there was a lot of error along the way. First there was slime mold, right? Then there were squirrely, squirmy, slimy things. There's all kinds of stuff that we would find repulsive, which were the foundational structure of what it is we are now. So we're also squishy and slimy. If you look at our byproducts, it's pretty easy to see something of that original condition. But we have all parts of the evolution within this body. It's the record, it's the memory of the entire movement of the creation. And it's completed itself, it's fulfilled the purpose of that evolution with us. So, the question that Arjuna has at this point, of course this is still a story, is, okay, then how come I'm here? How come it's like this? Yes, now I know you. I now am one with you. I am feeling the completion of and the profound intimacy of being the personal expression of the divinity, the universal expression, the personal universal. But then what? I'm still here. And of course, sooner or later, this conversation with you, Krishna, is going to end, and I've got this lousy job ahead of me, right? So what's its relevance? How does it work into things? So he's He's knowing something very, very important has changed. And he's trying to figure out what to do with this. So knowledge about what it is that has a body is just as important as understanding the nature of the body. So what is it that has a body? Raise your hands, kids. If you didn't have a body, you wouldn't be in this room. We wouldn't be having this conversation. Okay. So what is it that has a body? It's that which raised the hand. That could hear the words and giggle at the shift in context. So this is self-evident. This is so simple and so immediate and so right here, right now, that we don't even pay attention to it at all. Because it's the foundational orientation. I have a body and I got all this stuff to do and these things I want to do and these things I don't want to do and these ideas and these plans and these things to worry about and all the biochemistry that goes on with me. And if you look at the nature of the body, it's quite complex, right? It's hungry, it's thirsty, it's got to take a dump, it wants to sleep, it wants to get laid, it has all these, wants to be comfortable, doesn't want to be uncomfortable. Then it's got the senses, right? It's got all the things that we look at, that we hear, that we assign value to. So we look in the room and then we assign value with some things in the room but not other things. So who's assigning value? You're paying attention to me versus the light up there or the ant crawling along the floor. We're assigning value. What is it that assigns value through the senses? What is it that makes things meaningful, important? So the body is the instrument by which we have a relationship with what seems to be an external world, with all kinds of things happening. So many things are happening, even according to the five senses. Little less what the five senses can't perceive. Why are we attending to just this? What is it that's attending to just this? This is the nature of the knower. And the body is the means by which the knower can know. Without the body, there would be no knower, nor object of knowing, nor process of knowing. Self-apparent truths, but they have profound implications when you extrapolate them out. A great deal has to do with what is the nature of what is our true nature. Satyamayi was sharing with me yesterday that she had a new realization. She took a while to articulate it. I had to keep telling me, okay, what is it? And she says, I'm that which does not suffer. So I say, well, that's the absolute. You can describe something through its negative as well as through its positive. So that which does not suffer. So what is that? That's the field. That's the, I've got to be careful with my language in here because field's the body. It is the space in which the field arises. It doesn't suffer, but what's in the space can suffer. Can be miserable, can be anxious, can be pleasured, can be happy, can be all those things. So what do we look at? The ground or the field, right? Those black and white photographs where they're cut in a certain way and you look at it one way, you see only the white, and you look at another way, you see only the dark. So it's really a matter of perception. What is it that perceives the difference? I am the suffering, or I'm that which has suffering. My arm, I have a wound on my arm, therefore I'm hurting, or my arm is wounded. These are contextual perspectives. that occur in the nature of consciousness that can make all the difference when you're trying to discover what you are and what is the nature of reality.
What is this field? What is its nature? What are its components? Whence it comes? Who is the knower? And what are its powers? All these now hear from me briefly. Seers have spoken about this in so many words, in different rhymes and poetic meters. The Brahma Sutra and other sacred scriptures have also convincingly explained this concept. The great elements, the ego, the intellect, and the unmanifest, the 10 sense organs, the mind, and the 5 objects of senses.
Okay, so basically this is just continuing to describe something of the nature of what I've just said. That this entire plethora, this cacophony of existence, is actually arising in the field of us, in the space of us. That this is not what we are that in which it arises, but the content is what can only arise within our space. That which it can notice or experience was arising is the knower. And that which is lost or caught up in what's arising is the experiencer. There are 2 different phases. One is detached, one's attached, one's evolved, one's involved. It's the same thing, just 2 different perspectives. It's not just that there's an ego and then there's an Atman, a self. They're the same thing in just different engagement with the event of creation. One's more invested in it, one's less invested in it. This is the fundamental of this chapter. There is that which can be known, which is the field, the body, its emotions, its beliefs, its ideas, and then that which is the knower of that field. The nature of our embodiment is that we think we are that which is to be known. And we get lost in ourselves as the knower, absorbed in the experiencing. So there's knowing going on, but not in our true state, but as in our state as invested or content-filled as the experiencer would be. So this is what it's pointing to, and it's also pointing to our ability to control or have a say over that involvement or detachment. The ego, the intellect, and the unmanifest. So, what is ego? We've heard of ego before. Ego is nothing but activity. It is the field of awareness engaged in activity, like a little whirlwind, a tornado, a dust devil that happens in the atmosphere. You can't see it, but when it starts whirling, it starts taking on content, picks up dirt, picks up brush, and it starts seeming to be real. So ego is actually a verb. It's a doingness, an activity that's occurring in the field of this interaction between matter and spirit. So our ego is really nothing but accumulation of habits or patterns of activity that make us think the same thought, feel the same thing, feeling. And that unwittingly, each time we have such an experience, we tend to repeat the experience. We tend to become that again. So all these habits start from the formation of the body, the cells of the body. If you'll notice, there's this aggregating within atomic structure. It goes into then chemistry, and then molecules, and then cells, and then into different types of cells. And all of it's very habitual. As we sit here, parts of your body are dying right now. Cells are dying right now, and of course they're being born. They say every 7 years we replace all the cells in the body but the brain. So this death and rebirth is going on within us continuously. So do we grieve every time a cell, every time a hair falls out of your head or a flake of skin comes off? No. So we're an event. We're actually an event, a thing happening. Yes, the time scale may be 7 years or 30 years or 90 years, but it's just an event, temporary event that's happening. And when the physicality of that structure can no longer be sustained, it dissipates into its original elements. It doesn't change who you truly are. It just changes who you thought you were. As that falls away, what's left over is your true nature. I'm being simplified. The bitch of this thing is that ego doesn't need a body to exist, to keep going. Egoing is like a wind, right? If there's no content in the wind, it's still a wind. It's still whirling. There's something in that whirling that has it exist. So when it picks up content, when it takes on a body, then the whirling has a story, has an idea. There's a me and there's a you, and there's my last affair, and my good meal, and then what I got to do tomorrow, and there's all that in that whirling. But when that content's gone, the whirling's still there. It never dies. It just changes form. Sometimes it's whirling fast, sometimes it's whirling slow. Once in a while, in a good meditation, it's not hardly whirling at all. Feels good, too. Whirling's a lot of work. Being an ego is a lot of work. There's this kind of stress, because you're keeping all these things going. It's exhausting. That's why we have to sleep so much. To keep us keep going. Because we think that's who we are, so we desperately keep it going. We get angry and upset, we get defensive, and we get reactive. Because we think that if we don't have this content, we will not exist. So misery is just a form of whirling. Suffering is a resisting, wanting to be different, controlling. It's all this structure by which unwittingly the knower has forgotten itself and become the content of its knowing. So the body is an extraordinary vehicle. First there's the physicality, then there's the 5 senses. And actually the 10 senses is because they're counting each eye, each ear, each nostril. It's cheating. But there are means by which we experience this event. If it wasn't for eyes, ears, nose, taste, skin, we wouldn't know jack shit about this world. We would just know perhaps the sensations that were occurring in the body. If there was pain, or if there was pleasure, if there was pressure, if it was hot or cold. That's all you would know within the body, without the 5 senses. Doesn't mean we don't exist. And it doesn't mean this world doesn't exist, but our ability to experience it, participate in it, isn't there or as developed. So it's an extraordinary thing how we ended up. And most of them are right here on the face. Ever notice that? They all clustered, almost all of them but touch. It's right here in this one part. Isn't that how that got created? And if you notice the nature of what these senses do, they're always looking for something to eat, right? Something interesting to look at, something to hear, something to taste, smell, touch, right? So it's always, look at it. What is it looking at? It's looking at the objects. And it's trying to eat the object. It wants to assimilate it. It wants to swallow it. Like a worm going through the dirt looking for nourishment, eating all the mud and the roots of the grass. It's just assimilating. And it's bringing it in. It's digesting it. It's assimilating it. And then it's eliminating the unwanted part, leaving it behind. So we're just an orifice. These five senses are just mouths for eating experience, for knowing things, grasping and getting and avoiding and having. It's just a machine. And it's right there from the very beginning slime mold. If you watched how it multiplied, if you watched how it would absorb something and then consume it, we're the same thing. So let's put things in perspective. We do make much ado about nothing, by the way. It's our favorite pastime. Making much ado about nothing. Or ignoring the real ado, making it into nothing. Making something out of nothing and nothing out of something. Favorite pastime. That and puzzles and games and human relationships and failure and success and accomplishment. Being successful and famous and recognized and being ignored and alone and dying. Such a game. And then the intellect. And the intellect is an extension of the mind. So the body's basically got three major components. It's got the physical body, it's got the vital drives. It has the lower vital drives, which are reproduction, survival, wanting, getting. Then it has the higher vital, which is relational, connection, feeling. These vital drives are the will to be. They're the life force. They're the will to be, the living us. Are basically a collection of drives and feelings. And so far as most human beings, the vital is where things are real. When you feel something, or when you really want something, or when you're really angry, or when you're really, that's when you feel you're alive. Then there's the mental. And the mental is the symbol creator. It keeps storing records. It's a record-keeping machine that keeps the record, the mind. The basic structure of the mind is memory. Keeping track of things, categorizing things, figuring out what things are in relationship to your endless consuming through the senses. What is it to know? What is it to not know? What is important? What's not important? The mind creates these priorities, sets up these structures. It's automatic. It's not, this came with the body. You don't do it, it does it. And you learn to do it. If it wasn't instinctive, it's trained. So man isn't run so much by instinct. Animals are more hardwired. Man has got a lot more software. He's a lot more programmable. She's a lot more programmable. A lot of options are possible in the orientation of the mind in the human vehicle versus other creatures. Then you have the intellect. Now what is the intellect? The intellect is unique to the human being because it carries the capacity to make choices. To decide to do this versus that, or appear to make choices. It's really making choices based on everything else in its system, but it appears to make choices. It's eating bananas versus papayas, right? It's having oatmeal instead of eggs. It is choosing, okay? This isn't the super rational analytical mind, but it's the basis of it. Now that mind carries with it a possibility, a higher possibility than the other parts, to know that which is not directly accessible to the senses. We would call that the intelligence or the psychic. The ability to know without thinking. It could be intuitive, it could be insightful, it could be an inspiration. Of course, this affects all other parts of the body concurrently, but the nature of the mind and the intellect is it's beginning to be the place where the knower can know itself. It's much harder for the knower to know itself in the lower frequencies of the body because they're more primitive. They're more dramatic. They're more driven out of necessity or fear. So it's in this frequency, at the vehicle, that we're having this conversation. Okay.
Desire, repulsion, happiness, sorrow, aggregation of the body, consciousness, and firmness. These are, in brief, the different modifications of this field. Humility, absence of pride, nonviolence, forbearance, simplicity, service to the spiritual master, purity, perseverance, self-restraint.
Okay, let's hold on this part and let me finish this last one on 495. Desire, repulsion, happiness, sorrow, aggregation of the body, consciousness, and firmness. These are, in brief, the different modifications of the field. This is basically duality. The tension that exists with opposites. So desire and repulsion is really attraction and repulsion. I would say desire and fear. You know, fear versus wanting something, wanting to get away from it. So there's attracted to something and repulsed by something. So these dynamics came out of the necessity to survive as a body, right? There was some food you eat that would nourish you, and there was some food you would eat that would poison you. There was eating, and then there was being eaten. And the second was a less desirable option. So they would much prefer to eat. So there are these dualities that came into this creation, which are manifesting themselves. They were there previous to bodies, but they're manifesting themselves in these characteristics in all of us. So they're hugely, you know, everything has its opposite. So this is the description of something of the matrix we find ourselves tangled up into. Modifications of the field. The other thing is aggregation of the body. This aggregating, it is the nature of the ego to affirm itself through more of itself. So what it does is it seeks to confirm its existence with another. So if we look at aggregation relationship, it's to have a friend, it's to have a brother or a sister or a mother or a father. It is this aggregating, but it doesn't just include relations, it's also in knowledge. We aggregate a sense of self. Who are we? What's our name? Okay, yes, I have that. I'm this old and I have this set of circumstances, but who are we? Aggregate through knowledge. Like, oh, okay, I'm born at this time of the year, I'm an Aquarius, or I'm a Cancer, and this is what that means, and so on and so forth. We aggregate, and in the aggregation, we get a greater sense of separate self. Okay, now we'll continue.
Dispassion towards objects of enjoyment of this world, absence of egoism, non-identification with the miseries of this world like birth, sickness, old age, and death, etc. Non-attachment, non-identification with children, wife and family matters, place of dwelling, etc. And constant equipoise of mind in good and bad situations.
Keep going.
Constant union with me, unswerving devotion to me, an intense longing for solitude and distaste for companionship with material-minded people. Constancy in the pursuit of spiritual knowledge and accepting God realization as the supreme truth of life. All these are said to be conducive to true knowledge. All that is contrary to this is called ignorance.
So these 5 verses, or 4 verses, seem like a non sequitur. 5 verses seem like a non sequitur. Suddenly, it's a whole other conversation. He's now talking about characteristics of someone who is at a very high state, obviously. And this is, of course, a continuation of what he had talked about at the end of the 12th chapter. What he was trying to present to Arjuna was that part of him that was not doing this aggregation. This part of him that had stepped, what happens to a human being when it begins to step out of this egoing pattern. And the characteristics that they begin to manifest. So if you look at it, it's all the things we've ever heard about spirituality, right? Dispassion, humility, absence of pride, forbearance, simplicity. What happens here is when the consciousness, when the knower, begins to disengage from the objects of knowing, it takes on certain characteristics. It becomes more equanimous, more free, less bound, therefore less miserable, less fearful, controlling, anger, attached. And it happens naturally. This separation of consciousness from its involvement with matter begins to create qualitative differences in the person's experience of life. It's not like they develop these attributes. It's not like these attributes are good. Though they are, but they are really symptomatic of what happens to the consciousness when it begins to disengage from its involvement in the field, in the content. So you can look within yourself. Is there humility, absence of pride, taking credit for things, credit, blame, being right, avoiding being wrong? This tendency to be angry, to do violence, is that seed there or is it not? Is inclination to be simple, not interested in doing new things, not interested in traveling about, not a lot of interest, no need, there seems to be no need for lots of different things. The natural inclination to not go with the reaction to the impulse. Say, oh, look at that, what's that coming up? But do I really want that? Probably not. It is this detaching of the consciousness from its embedment. This is now occurring in this chapter. It's a revelation, but it's also, and it is also describing the symptoms of one who is coming to what is going to be revealed in this chapter. Non-identification with your children. We make our children us, right? Our relations us. So what happens to them hurts us. We make them an extension of ourselves. We aggregate these people so that when they're happy, we're happy. When they suffer, we suffer. So this absence of doing that is an indication that the consciousness is returning to its source. And this sense of constant union with me. Now, this is already occurring. At this stage of the journey, Arjuna is actually merged with Krishna. He is merged. He doesn't know it yet, but he is merged with Krishna. So he is actually in the state, and Krishna is pointing it out to him. So he can say, this is something of where you are right now. I said, hold on, look at that. I don't have this drive to kill, or this resentment, or this hatred. It's not there anymore. And it's very handy since they're mostly relatives and friends, so he's going to have to battle down the road here. So it's handy not to be as invested. And now, of course, with the fire of the 12th chapter, the pursuit, the continuing to pursue the fulfillment of what has come, the momentum is still there. So Arjuna is still striving. That's why he asked the questions at the beginning of the chapter. He's still striving now to know what has happened. What's happened to me? What is this? What does that say now about this existence? All these qualities are conducive to knowledge. And all that's contrary to this is called ignorance. So what is it? He's not talking about what it is. He's talking about the symptoms of the thing. And that, the knowing what it is not in the same category as aggregation. It's in the opposite category of de-aggregating, of becoming simple, of becoming less, And then this true knowledge, this jnana, becomes revealed naturally. Okay, let's
Now I shall tell you that which is worth knowing, which ensures immortality. It is the knowledge of the beginningless Supreme Brahman, who is neither manifest nor unmanifest, neither being nor non-being. Having hands, feet, eyes, ears, heads, and faces everywhere, it exists in this world, pervading and enveloping everything.
Okay. All right, so now Krishna is taking the conversation out and turning it towards that which Arjuna is now heading for. He's given a name to it. He's called it Brahman. That's just a name. Don't be confused by the names. He used multiple names for the same thing in this chapter, as he does throughout the Gita. But it's this turning away to that which is what Arjuna is now heading towards, so that he can begin to not only know the nature of what it is coming out from, but now what you're heading towards. So these verses are a revelation of the nature of truth, the nature of the knower. Okay.
Manifesting itself through all the senses, yet completely free from the senses, unattached, yet sustaining all, though attributeless, but enjoying all the qualities, it is immanent and all-pervading. It dwells within and without all beings. Because of its subtlety, it is both moving and unmoving, beyond comprehension, existing simultaneously near and far. Though all-pervading and whole, it appears as if divided in animate and inanimate beings. It is the only object of knowledge, the creator, sustainer, and destroyer of beings. It is the light of all lights beyond darkness. It is knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the process of knowing. It is seated in the hearts of all beings.
She could just keep rereading those verses and I would keep swimming in the state. I just love it. Okay, so here, I'll tell you what my experience is of this state. Because what it's saying is full of contradictions, right? Manifesting through all the senses, yet completely free from it. Okay. Unattached, yet sustaining all, attributeless, but enjoying all the qualities. It's all contradictions. How can this happen? So, some years ago, I had the experience of what this is. And basically, the experience of it is, there's only one thing. There's only one, this principle called Brahman. There is nothing other. But there is like a veil, like a peace in this infinitude. And when the Brahman looks at itself, it only sees Brahman. But when it looks through this veil, it sees everything. So it's like putting on a pair of glasses, right? I'm the ocean. And when I put on a pair of glasses, I see the creation. It's not just see. It comes into existence for me. And these glasses are this structure of duality in space and time. It is a fabric, a design, a matrix. And it's only a tiny part of me. It's only a tiny part of my infinity. But when I look at the creation through that matrix, it all looks different. It all has shape. It all is moving somewhere. It all has direction. It all has evolution. It all has purpose. But as soon as I take the glasses off, it is only me. But it's also me that I'm looking at, but now it has these characteristics. So what does this mean? It means that this bottle of water is as real as I am, as you are, as every other thing that is, including truth. Because it carries the nature of reality. why I can touch, feel, taste, drink this bottle of water is because it has reality. There is only truth. There is no such thing as untruth. There is no mirage. It's only a perception. It's only a way of looking. It's not a delusion. It's actually a delight. That everything that seems real derives its reality from this one principle, which is experiencing the hardness of the wall through this vehicle. There is only that. There is nothing else but that. And it always has been that way. And it always will be that way. So it's quite freeing, by the way. When you can see that this entire creation isn't separate from you. It isn't really accurate to say it's just a small piece of you. It's simply a perception. An enjoyable perception. If you get away from pain and misery and identification with it, it's interesting perception. So, in this chapter, the revelation, I'm sharing with you my experience of this revelation. I'm using these words, and Krishna is using those words where they were chanted 5,000 years ago to communicate something. And what's so remarkable is how closely these words translated, taken out of chanting into words, Sanskrit, somehow preserved to the millenniums, and then translated into various languages, eventually English, can still carry something of the essence of the revelation of this chapter. Just extraordinary. Something through time, something long forgotten, can be preserved in the language of those who have forgotten. A remarkable event. But it's all perfectly natural from this context. When you know the nature of it, there are no miracles, or it's all miracles. It's all a matter of perception. It is the light of all lights beyond darkness. It is that which knows. It is the knowledge itself, the object of the knowledge, and the process of knowing is all of these. And its seat is within each of us. This separative idea of self, this separative egoic body that you're inhabiting. If it wasn't for this body, this conversation couldn't be happening in this room. If it wasn't for that, there couldn't be any articulation of the nature of what's all-pervading, which you could not possibly know, unless there was something different. So if it wasn't for you being different, unique, and having intelligence and self-awareness, and having been through the ordeal of human experience long enough, you would not have any ability to grasp what is being communicated now. And that's the wonder. Okay, let's continue.
This is in brief the field, the knowledge, and the object of knowledge. Knowing this, my devotees come fit to attain me. Arjuna, both Prakriti and Purusha are beginningless. The deformations and the gunas are born of Prakriti. Prakriti is said to be responsible for cause and effect and the sense of doership, while Purusha is said to be the cause of the experience of pain and pleasure.
Okay, so now Krishna is going beyond just showing the infinitude of the state of consciousness, the Brahman. Now he's giving Arjuna a languaging, a way of understanding how these things actually work. How do they actually interface? You have the field and the knower of the field. How do they interface? Well, it's saying that the field, the body, is Prakriti, and that which knows Prakriti is the Purusha. So he's labeling what we've been talking about now. And this principle of Prakriti and Purusha has been throughout the Vedas, and it's probably among all the different revelations and teachers, this languaging is pretty much held up. And basically, it's two conditions of being. The difference between the Brahman and the Purusha is the Purusha has a condition of being. It's a person. It is something of a person. While the Brahman, there is no person associated with it. So it's one is a quality, and the other is an aspect of consciousness, the aspect of beingness. So there is the Purusha and the Prakriti, and it's talking about what we've been talking about up to now, but now in this languaging, so that you can be able to bring it into your experience, to be able to make this distinction between the experience of being you and one who knows it's having the experience of you. And it's Prakriti is what creates cause and effect. Prakriti is what gives us a sense of doership, ego. Because of this uniqueness of happens to consciousness when it becomes embedded in the body, is it thinks it's separate. And so therefore when it thinks it's separate, even though there's only one thing acting throughout all the creation, it thinks it's the one that's acting. It imagines it's the one who's angry, it's the one who's reacting, it's the one who's choosing. But it's not, just the machinery is doing it. So it thinks it's the doer. So this idea of doership has to do with the body, with the ego, and the whole structure is associated with the body. So yes, there's action going on, but we're going along for the ride. We're not actually doing the action, unless we're identified with it. Then we think we're doing the action, but it's just a matter of perception, not fact. Okay, let's continue.
The Purusha, while residing in Prakriti, experiences the gunas of Prakriti, and because of this identification with the gunas, the Purusha takes birth in good and evil wombs. The supreme Purusha that dwells in this body is called the witness, the consenter, the supporter, the enjoyer, the great Lord, and also the supreme being.
Okay. So the Purusha resides within Prakriti, right? We are our body, we are our thoughts, we're our feelings. So we're there, in there with the body, and we're not able to make the distinction between what our body is feeling and what we're feeling. We think that what the body is feeling is what we're feeling, and we will defend this till we die if we have our way, right? So the idea is that we're enmeshed in this experience of being a body, forgetting our original nature. This is because we're identified with the nature of the gunas. Now, this is the introduction to the gunas in terms of what they are. The next chapter goes into it with a great bit of detail. Can somebody go and address this gentleman? Ask him to walk away. So, this is India. It just random event. We don't have good, homogenized separation like we do in the West. We put them in mental institutions or old people's homes or other things, so we don't have to be bothered. But here, we don't have the boundaries. They come walking right up into your door in the middle of the day, yelling at you in some kind of sound language that you can't understand. It's even a real language. This is the delight. This is what it is. It's not right or wrong. But we in the West try to separate all these disturbing random events. Because otherwise we can't hang on to our cohesive sense of self, right? It gets disturbing. Well, we got a purpose here. We're revealing the Gita. It's important, right? Get this crazy old man out of here. But it's all one truth. It's just dance. It's just some kind of investment, thinking this is more important than that. So this identification, the gunas are basically action. They're just the different vibrational frequencies of action. The nature of this whole creation is action, right? And from the very first piece of matter, it's activity, it's vibration. And then this vibration has momentum, it has attraction and repulsion. Certain atoms go with other atoms and so on. They have magnetic, the weak beta forces, and the weak forces are pulling matter, and eventually they aggregate. It's all a frenetic activity. This is why in the Vedas you have Shiva dancing this frantic dance. Have you ever seen it? It's frantic dance of existence. It looks like chaos. If you took away our little containers, our little individuality, our comfort zone, and we were just energy, it is total chaos. No rhyme or reason. What creates sense out of the senses, what creates sense out of the chaos is the knower. And it can only do that because it's not moving. So the gunas are what move. We get hooked into the gunas, and before we know it, we're riding the rapids of experience. Highs and lows, up and down, sattva, rajas, and tamas. And that's the current. And this current we get sucked into. We lose our equanimity, we lose our poise, we lose our silence and stillness. That's our natural state. And we become agitated. Welcome to Prakriti. A state of agitation. We call it existential stress. Just to be. It's a roller coaster ride. And here in verse 511 tells you how you can ride this roller coaster. Or not ride this roller coaster. It actually implies that you have choice. To back away or to go in. And that we didn't know we had choice before we woke up. But by this chapter of the Gita, we now actually have choice. We don't need to go into the chaos. We don't need to go into this current anymore because we're no longer trying to prove we're something separate, different, unique, special, whatever. We don't need to. We're something other than whatever that was, that ego is. So it dwells with in the body as the witness, one who can watch this activity going on. It comes in chapter 6. When one begins to meditate naturally, they move into merger with the self. That's when you can begin to witness your Prakriti. You can begin to witness your body, your personality doing so. So it's the ability to be the witness. As the witness, there is a next stage of involvement, which is the consenter. You can give your consent or withdraw your consent. You can say, okay, I'll go on this ride, or no, I won't go on this ride. This gives you something of the authority and the power of the Purusha. It is the one who can give or withdraw consent, permission to get involved or not get involved. The supporter. So this is the next thing. So if it becomes a consenter, then there's also possibly to support what you consented. Okay, this feels good. Let's go with it. Right? Let's go further. Let's get immersed. Let's take the fourth drink. Let's get laid. Let's, eat the whole thing. Not just the piece of the cake, the whole cake. So it supports Prakriti's inclination. It allows Prakriti to do her play. You might even make it worse or better. Play with it. Because it's play at this point. If you have choice, you have play. And then the enjoyer. Now, you gotta know something about the enjoyer. It isn't just enjoying the good parts. It's enjoying the bad parts. Yes, it's enjoying eating the whole cake. It's also enjoying the stomach ache that follows. It is not having a boundary about its enjoyment. It's that which actually experiences and knows while it's going on. It's that which is awake while this is going on. It's paying attention, noticing. One who has the mastery, one who has these capacities to choose to be the witness, to give consent or to withdraw consent, to be the supporter or to withdraw support, to be the enjoyer or to withdraw the support, that's the great Lord. You have become the Lord of this world, your world. You have become the authority in existence. The great Lord's not way up there, it's right here. And how the proof in the pudding is your ability to come to authority in your relationship with your Prakriti. And of course, once you can do that with your Prakriti, you can do it with everybody's Prakriti. That's what the great Lord means. That you have a power and authority that goes beyond your individual existence, that comes to you when you've mastered these capabilities. This chapter is very powerful. This verse is very powerful in terms of understanding what I talk about coming to responsibility or coming to authority. Because if you're miserable and suffering, somewhere along the line you've been choosing it. Because it's only one part of existence. If you're addicted to something, something in you is choosing that. And it's not easy, because some of these three energy waves in the gunas are very, very demanding, very hard to resist, very hard to come out of. It's very easy to be the witness when you're in sattva. It's a lot harder to be the witness when you're in rajas, and almost impossible to be the witness when you're in tamas. But mastery begins with this ability to withdraw or give our consent, support, enjoyment. And the second you're the great Lord, the second you come to that authority, then you are the Supreme Being. That which can come to that authority is the Supreme Being. All right, is there a difference between the great Lord and the Supreme Being? Well, I believe it's contextual. The Supreme Being is that which is not so specific, but still has beingness. That's my experience of it. So it's like a confidence. It's like being the Father of all existence. And then you step forward and you act as the Lord from that place of authority, that place of knowing what you are. It's beyond mastery. It's not just discipline. It's just a capacity for knowing and acting. An understanding of the nature of why and how things are happening, and to recognize what needs to happen in the emerging process that's aligned with the overall intent of existence, the evolutionary intent of existence. So it has no role to play, the Supreme Being, but to hold the space and the purposefulness of the original intent of existence. And then out of that, whatever it sees needs to be put in place, gets set in motion, and there will be beings who will then have a mission, and then they will take actions that are consistent with the perspective of the Supreme Being. But most people don't come to the place of the Supreme Being. There's some lesser expression of the Supreme Being. Even when I talk mostly, I am a lesser expression of the Supreme Being. But rest is the Supreme Being. So the realization is that I am the context in which this entire existence showed up. Because from this nodality, this particular body, vehicle, there is a node by which the whole thing can be known and experienced. If it wasn't for this field, that would not be possible. The Supreme Being would never know itself. Therefore, there would be no Supreme Being. Therefore, there would be no creation. Therefore, it would just be an endless movement of inexplicable forces. No one there to know anything about what was going on, just in the torrent of it. Giving you some sense of what this chapter is introducing. Okay?
One who thus knows the Purusha and the Prakriti together with the gunas is never born again, whatever may be his mode of life. Some see the self through the self by meditation, others see it through the technique of discrimination, while a few realize this through the yoga of action. Still others, not knowing this, worship by hearing from others. They also, being devoted to me, go beyond death. Arjuna, all beings, whether moving or unmoving, are born due to the union of the field with its knower. One who is a true seer, if he is able to realize that the Supreme Lord is existing alike in all beings and does not perish when these bodies perish, because he is able to see that the Supreme Lord is residing equally in all beings, he does not endanger the self by the self and attains the supreme goal.
Okay, so it's talking about a perspective, a point of view of recognizing this, what we've been describing in your own experience. Arjuna came to the place of absolute oneness. When oneness happens, the question of humility disappears because you're equal with everything. There's no inequality, so there's no pride. There's no ego in the usual sense, because you're one with everything. Everything is you and you are everything. And it's not even something you have to think. It is what's so. So if a fly lands on your hand and you look at the fly, it's you. And you're as intimate with that fly as you are with your lover, with your child, with beauty, with anything. It is simply an expression of you. And the feeling of that is wonderful. It's a wonderful feeling. But it's so much there that you don't notice it there until you attend to it by focusing on something. And then you can say, oh, there I am. There it is. And that's all. It's a self-existent fulfillment. Self-existent condition of being, which you could call Satchitananda, truth, consciousness, and bliss going on at the same time. A vibratory field in which these things are emerging into your attention. They emerge into your attention, and then they recede into your attention, and then recede. So one who's able to operate from that place of oneness can actually now go further by understanding these principles of Purusha and Prakriti, of consent or support. It's coming out of the natural state into what will prove to be the avataric state, the incarnational state, the Krishna state. He's now guiding Arjuna towards a body of knowledge and understanding so that he can take what has now established itself to recognize what has happened to him eventually. That is, to realize what he has merged with. And with that comes the responsibility, comes the authority. The responsibility and authority come together of the mission that each of us have, who comes to this state. It's not for no reason. It's just not so you can be the drop that merges with the ocean. There's always a reason that an individual will come to these later stages of consciousness in terms of the time and the space that they were born in, that this occurs in. So this is a beginning, this principles of the Purusha and the Prakriti is the beginning of understanding the nature of the matrix and how the matrix works and how the dials and knobs of making it work this way or that. This is the beginning of manifestation. Okay, continue.
When one is able to realize that all actions are performed only through Prakriti, and the Purusha is always a non-doer, then he is said to have realized the truth. When one realizes that the diversity of all beings rests in one Brahman, and all come forth from it, then he is said to have attained the Brahman. Arjuna, the Supreme Being, is without beginning, free from all attributes and imperishable, though residing in the body. It neither acts nor is attached to actions. As all-pervading ether is not contaminated due to its subtleties, so also the self is not contaminated, although residing in all bodies. As the one sun lights the whole world, so also the one all-pervading soul illuminates all bodies. Those who are able to know the difference between the field and its knower through the eye of knowledge and are capable of transcending Prakriti will attain the supreme state. Om Tat Sat. This is how Gita was revealed by Lord Krishna to Arjuna in the 13th chapter of Gita, entitled The Yoga of the Field and Its Knower.
Okay, so this is the beginning of the series of chapters which have to do with empowering the consciousness who has come to proximation of the supreme state. It's utterly ready. It's gone from its individual separative egoic condition into its individual free condition as the self. It's gone from the individual self to the impersonal universal, and from the individual self to the personal universal, God. So it's gone through, merged with truth, it's become truth, and it's become God, so it knows the universal level, the personal and the impersonal, in its own experience. Qualitatively, there is so much more energy going through the person system. There, the kind of nature of the knowing is of a complete different order than it was before. Each is increasing in the order and the magnitude of the consciousness that animates the body, which means it's experiencing everything that the body doesn't leave behind, the experience of the body. Salt, there's the taste of salt as a human being eating something salty. Then there's the consciousness that's experiencing that salty. Then there's the context in which salt arises, and then there's eating, and then there's the circumstances and the movement of time in mankind so that this moment could occur. There's this ability to be with the whole thing, with every little thing. So all that is preparatory. It is preparatory for a state where we come forward with all the parts of our individual system, our body, our mind, our personality, our story, our experiences, the wisdoms that we accumulated in the course of our life as human beings. All of this is now being able to be a means by which the Supreme can manifest into existence through you. So I'm trying to present the uniqueness of the Bhagavad Gita in terms of attainment. It's not about individual freedom. It's not about even merging with God. It's not about being wise or a great spiritual teacher. It's of a complete different order than that conversation. It has something to do with the vibrational frequency, the vibrational possibility of existence and our role and relationship with that, and our absolute true nature. This conversation would not be possible in any other age. The fact that I can speak this and have some of you still have your eyes open is unbelievable. It means that the systems of the people that are here in this room are reflective of a capacity for listening in the collective consciousness. I know that to have 10, 11 people, 12 people in this room who can be with this conversation is reflective of something much more than what seems to be happening in this room. Therefore, I can say something about the nature of the collective consciousness from the same way, because I'm not looking at it from this one point of view. I see the whole thing. I see the all in the one. So, there's now a listening. What does this say for mankind? What does it say for this universe? Why would this be happening? All I can believe, all I can know, is that the resistance and the inertia of ego, of Prakriti, is so huge that no matter how pure and how strong and how clear this revelation is, it's going to be greatly reduced. Because Prakriti has tremendous agreement, tremendous momentum. Ego has a tremendous momentum way beyond these 12, 13 people, or those who listen on this recording. And that momentum will so overtake this in the current of existence that the possibility of this surviving even a small fraction is small. You're going to walk out of this room, it's going to be about lunch. Watch. So, this is the play, this is the game, it's not right or wrong, it's just what is. It's useful that this can be recorded until the next big EMP event, and then all these recordings will be gone and lost forever. In this glimpse of time, you're in the audience of a revelation that a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of mankind has been able to even witness or get a sense of. Because even in my own experience, when I was in merger, what I'm speaking was alien to me. I didn't know what this was when I was having all my goddess disease experiences. I didn't know what this was when I was going into samadhis for those 3.5 years. I knew it was incredible. I knew it was like nothing I ever knew, but I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know if it had a purpose. I didn't know anything. It wasn't until these chapters, when they became real for me, it's not the Gita that did it. It's pointing, it's a map that's showing me where I have been traveling. And now that I've gotten there, I can see the whole journey, and I can see how the Gita is the map of the whole journey. And there aren't that many people who are going to be able to tell you this, to point it out, to say where you are in the journey and say, hey, okay, well, you're going to have to work on this one. You know, you're going to have to get over this thing. You're going to have to endure this calmly until it's finished, so that you'll have enough freedom to choose, because right now you're not able to choose. And I'll forget it too. I'll go to lunch, because it's no more important than anything else. It's all equal, you see. That's why these things are so ephemeral, so temporary. But because I have a mission and a purpose, and because I've disciplined my life for this many years, that now I can pull this out whenever it's needed. Because it's right there. It's always right there. Okay. All right, so thank you all. This completes the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Blessing.